we went on the mission trip this summer. We took the youth out there, and we've really been kind of focusing on, just kind of getting them to kind of be servants, to serve others, to do for others, to share what they have with others. And that's just kind of been our focus this summer. And so now that we're back and I'm trying to think, what am I going to speak on? What message am I going to kind of prepare that they would identify with? And so I've kind of felt like the Lord was like, let's sow back into them now. Let's talk about them, their person, like what they deal with. And so today I'm going to speak on identity. Just knowing who you are in Christ. And so we had a specific day where we were out with our family. We're having family day, and we had like our chill time at the end of the night. We always end it with a movie. And this particular night, we were watching a movie called The Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And I'm preparing for the message, doing some research while I'm watching the movie. So I'm watching the movie, and I've seen this movie probably 100 times. I could probably quote half of it because my kids have loved it so much over the years. And it's also books, and they've all read the book and everything. So anyways, I'm watching this movie for like the 101st time. And but I realized for the first time while watching it that it is literally a story about a kid who struggles with his identity. He's not okay with who he is, so therefore he's trying to be someone else. Actually, probably 75% or more of the movie, he is trying to do everything he can to become popular. So basically, if he becomes, and he gets his face in this yearbook, is kind of his goal. If he gets his face in this yearbook, then everybody's going to see him and he's going to be popular. So the story goes something like this. Greg Heffley is between the ages of 11 and 12 years old. He's in middle school. He basically is trying to prove himself the whole entire time. He wants to be popular. He's kind of like small and doesn't have like the cool friends or anything. So this is his goal, like most of the movie. And so it's just a story about him trying to be a better version of what he thinks it should, what he thinks is a better version of himself. So he joined the wrestling team, and that didn't end well. He wound up getting slammed by a girl, and of course, middle schoolers had fun with that one. He joins the safety patrol. He causes some trouble with some of the younger students. His best friend, he wind up having him take the blame for it so that, again, he didn't look some kind of way in front of others, so he let someone else take the blame for it. Dude even tried to fake an injury. He bandaged up his arm and everything to make himself look like he was hurt so that others would, sympathize with him, feel sorry for him. And that didn't work too well because the story was he actually wound up breaking his friend's arm, and he was jealous of the attention his friend was getting, so he had this like little fake injury, and it didn't work too well. So this guy did not know his own identity, and he tried to create a counterfeit version of himself. That's pretty much what we're doing whenever we have this person God says we are, and then we want to be this, or we think that we're not good enough, or whatever it may be. So God has already given us our identity. We were created as the person that He says we are, but we're always trying to find our identity in and through others, mainly social media for the youngsters. It blows my mind how much value they put into their social media likes and request to follow and everything. So anyways, I did some research, and the definition of identity is the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. Our identity is the qualities, beliefs, personality, looks, and expressions that make a person. This is a God-given gift. This is what He puts in us. A psychological identity relates to self-image, how we see ourselves. So if we have an unstable identity, this means that you don't have a good sense of who you are as a person. An unstable identity means that you don't have a good sense of who you are as a person. And how many of us can relate to that? I speak mainly to youth, to young people. But in reality, this is a topic that we all can deal with. I'm in my 40s. I mean, you look at people in the Bible, like in the Bible, we see many people that struggle with this. Moses, in Exodus 3:11, he says, "Why me? What makes you think that I could ever go to Pharaoh and lead the children of Israel out of Egypt?" He was struggling. Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Jesus was his identity, was who he was. He was a Christian, a Jesus follower, and he had denied that 3 times. Saul, he had a part in persecuting Christians. It wasn't until later that he became Paul and found his true identity. Once he found his true identity, he got the name changed, and then he lived his life for Jesus. So these 3 were people that struggled with who they were, and God still used them. God still showed them who he says that they are. So God said, "You are called, and you're my child, and we're going to do this together." And so even though they struggled with their identity, once he brought them to a place that they were ready to deal with that and give God that situation and accept what their true identity was, they were changing the world. I mean, Moses led the children of Egypt out of Israel. The children of Israel out of Egypt. You know, Peter was one of the greats of the beginning of the church. You know, the Christian church. He was the start of a lot of that. And then, so you see, before we know who we are, we have to know whose we are. I'm gonna say that again. That was really good. Before we know who we are, we have to know whose we are. And I'm here to tell you that the Bible has a lot of good stuff about whose we are. Ephesians 2:10, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in him." We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus. 1 Peter 2:9, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." Romans 8:37, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." So just those few verses we're his workmanship. We're his workmanship. We are created in Christ Jesus. We are his chosen people. We are a royal priesthood. We're a holy nation. We are God's special possession. I love that. We are God's special possession. And we are more than conquerors. And the word says that the same Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead lives in us. The same Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead lives in us. It's amazing. Imagine if we began to tackle more of this area of identity and knowing whose we are, and in that knowing who we are. Imagine what the world would look like if we took a hold of our true God-given identity. Imagine what Crowley would look like if we went out and we realized we have something to offer everyone. Even if just a handful of us, we could make a huge difference if a handful of us that struggle with the area of who we are, if we grabbed a hold of that. Crowley would be a different city. Our schools would be a different school system. Our school, Northside, would be a different place. Northside Christian School would be a different place if our students could connect with who God has created them to be. And stop looking at who social media and their friends are telling them who they should be. So just like Greg Heffley in the movie from earlier, he wanted so bad to find his identity in other things and other people. But once he did find his identity, he was a happy person. The end of the movie was great, and we all, like I said, we've watched it 100 times, and it's because it's a great storyline of someone overcoming. And even though it's fiction, it's not true. I believe that that's just one of the reasons why it's such a popular movie, is because kids can relate. Kids can relate to feeling some kind of way, but just wanting to be okay with who they are and who God created them to be. So today, let's decide who we are. Let's decide not who we are, but who God says we are. Let's decide that we are going to accept who he says we are, who he created us to be. accept the fact that we are called, that we are strong enough to live out these circumstances, deal with the school bullies or the people that don't like our Facebook statuses or whatever it may be. Let's grab a hold of who we are in Christ Jesus, because the same